Okay, time for another tutorial. This one, probably like most of them, I'm going to grab this large resolution HD whatever format. This is Illustrator. And one of the first things, as you probably know, I like to get rid of this busy checkerboard. I don't mind the checkerboard so much if it's a little more faint. Like, I like white, and then even if it was off-white by a tiny bit, like that would be much more workable for me. But I tend to just prefer completely one color. So you can make that color whatever you want. You could also check this. I'm not sure why the tutorial I watched said to check this, but I've been finding it works without it. So anyways, hit OK. And now let's see. We want to go to the internet, Google Fonts. Basically, the thing is, importing fonts, I actually just recently learned that Adobe has fonts, so they might actually be available to you. In other words, you go to the text tool over here, and you go to type something. Let's see, we've got to resize it. I'll use the direct select tool to resize it. And then you can go up here and check out all their different fonts. And I have already installed some of these that I like and use a lot, but you might not find some of these cooler fonts in here. So anyways, what I was mentioning is you can get Adobe fonts also. Let's see, activate Adobe fonts instantly, initializing. Okay, so it's downloading or loading the list of Adobe fonts, and that might actually be the way to go. But if there's a font that you like that's not loaded and it's not an Adobe font, here's a workaround that you can use to install, or not really install, but use whatever font you want. And that's what I want. That's what this tutorial is about. So let's say you can't find the font, but you do find a free Google font that has what you want. So let's say, let me find one that I like-ish. Let me see. I'm going to constrain it to, I don't want to see the serif or sans serif. I want no display, no monotypes. I'm going to go with handwriting so it looks kind of like this or something, Pacifico. So I'll click on that. And then whatever you type right here, so let's say you're doing Lincoln Savage or something, name of your school. And I noticed that it's kind of chopping it off right there. I'm going to want to make this larger anyways, but notice that it's cutting it right there. So one workaround for that is to use underscore, so it just pushes it out a little bit. And let's make it as big as we can. As it starts to intrude on this zone, you can see it gets faded. We want to back it off to where it's not faded at all. And we could even go Control Plus to make the screen bigger. We basically want it as large as we can get it. Well, I don't know if we can go very far because it's starting to fade out right there. So this is probably as big as we can get. Next, you want to go to the snipping tool. Just click on start and type snipping until you see this pop up. Click new, and then drag a rectangle around the whole thing. Uh-oh, looks like I chopped off the edge. So let me go new again. And this time I'll start down here. Okay, oops, I chopped off that. Let me do it again. Did I do it again? Actually, I think it's doing it on its own, isn't it? Yeah, something about that size or something. I don't know. Let me close this. Let me see what happens if I shrink it a little more. Nope, it's continuing to be chopped off. Oh, there. I got it somehow, a spot where it isn't being chopped off. So let me type snipping and say new. And let's see if I can get this right without cutting any edges. All right, so there. Hit Control C to copy it. Go back to Illustrator. Just delete that and paste this. Now, the interesting thing, I'm going to hit this right here to center it. But the interesting thing is, if you hit Z on the keyboard, it'll give you the zoom tool. Otherwise, you can be like a noob and click on this right here. But anyways, if you zoom in, you'll see it's pixelated. And that's a bitmap graphic. I want to turn this into what's called a vector graphic. And vector graphics, I'll go ahead and close this. Vector graphics are smooth even if you zoom in. So if you go over here and you just click, don't click image trace, click the little pull down next to it and pick the type of image trace you want to do. Low fidelity photo seems to work really well for these fonts. Not always. Sometimes you have to undo and try a different one. But if I click it, watch what happens. Ooh. Now let's zoom out. I like to go Control 1 to zoom out so I can see everything. And now we have nice smooth vector graphic. It's not a font where we can double click and change the letters or anything, but we can manipulate them a little bit. So main thing is it looks nice and smooth no matter how much you zoom in on it. So for the next step, to break these into individual pieces, actually, this is going to be all one piece because it's all connected, except for the dot, because the dot's not touching anything. And then over here, the S will end up being its own piece, and so on. So kind of break it up into individual parts. But let me bring back, interestingly enough, I have to bring back that checkerboard, that mild checkerboard pattern for you to see another thing that's going on here. There's a white background, and I want to be able to delete that. So just temporarily, I'm going to bring this checkerboard pattern so you can see that. So I'm going to click this, go to Object, Expand, and whatever the expand does, it kind of somehow, I'm not sure how it relates to expanding something, but it works on breaking this apart. You can kind of see there's now blue lines around each of these. And I think you got to right click and say ungroup. And then if you click on, it's still one piece. I'm going to hit Control Z. But if you do it again while it's selected, expand, and then ungroup again, for some reason it takes like twice. I'm going to click off. Now when I click, notice the white is a separate item. So I'm going to delete that now. And then this is a separate item too. But unfortunately, it didn't punch a hole in that. So I'm going to put it back, and I'm going to go, I'm going to select all this so it gets all these things. And then I'm going to try this minus front thing in the Pathfinder. And if you can't find this Pathfinder, go Window, Pathfinder. So while it's selected, while all this is selected, I'm going to hit minus front, and there. It takes whatever's in the front and punches a hole in what's behind it. I'm going to do the same thing over here, minus front. Oops, looks like it got rid of the S. I'm just going to select everything except for the S. And you may or may not have noticed I hit Control Z right away. Anytime I'm working with these tools, I'm Johnny on the spot with the Control Z because, I can't say that I've figured out these Pathfinders well enough to know exactly what they're going to do. And even if you get used to them, sometimes they behave in a way that you didn't expect. And so that's my habit, is to try it. And then if it doesn't work out right, I just hit Control Z and try another one. And you could probably just trial and error your way to eventually getting what you want that way. But eventually you are going to start to get an instinct for which ones do the sort of things you usually want them to do. So there you go. And now that that's done, you see we could manipulate things. I can move this to be down here or like this. And then I could select the whole thing. And let's see, I'm gonna right click and say group. That way it's all one chunk and I can center the whole thing. And then I want to do, I think I'm going to do, you can do a gradient. Like if you click up here and click gradient, but notice it's treating each thing, the dot is not connected. So it's being treated like a separate thing from the other parts. So to fix this, if you go Object, Compound Path, Make, suddenly it treats it like it's all one item. And then from there, let me see, here's the gradient tool. I'll click that. And from there, you can start manipulating. Like if you mouse over right here, you can, I think I want the black to be at the bottom. And if you hold Shift, it'll constrain to either 45 or horizontal or vertical, which is nice. And then I'll grab this little black dot and move it up. And then I think I'll grab this little square and change how high it goes. So, and with gradients, I've found it tends to look better if it's a little more subtle. So, something like that. Oops. So in other words, it tends to look better if you spread it out, and it's just a mild change from gray, light gray to black or whatever. Yeah, so there you go. I used a font from somewhere else to bring it in to Illustrator, and that's the tutorial for today.